الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح ربي زدني علما ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين آمين يا أرحم الراحمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. Alhamdulillah, by the grace and tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, today we are going to talk about ayah number 75 and 76 from Surah Al Imran. And we will go over the recitation and the word by word meaning first. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ومن أهل الكتاب من إن تأمنه بقنطار يؤده إليك ومنهم من إن تأمنه بدينار لا يؤده إليك إلا ما دمت عليه قائما ذلك بأنهم قالوا ليس علينا في الأميين سبيل ويقولون على الله الكذب وهم يعلمون.
Women and from Ahlil Kitabi, from the people of the book. Man, there is the one who. So man literally means who, but is the one who in this sentence. In ta'amanhu, if ta'amanhu, amana from like amanat, like we say amanat in Urdu as well. And so something that you put a trust with somebody. So let's say I'm going somewhere and I have some pieces of jewelry and then I give it to a friend of mine saying, can you hold them for me, like as a trust from me, and I'll take it from you when I come back, because I wanted to leave them with somebody trustworthy and I don't want to leave them lying around in my home or lying around somewhere else. I wanted to somebody trustworthy to hold it. So can you hold it for me? And that's a trust. And then when I come back, I ask that back and everything. So amana for trust. So in ta'amanhu, if you entrust him with this, bi qintarin. Qintar is heaps of gold, like lot of wealth. Like it's literally means like hundreds upon hundreds of coins. Or so like the origin of the word century comes from that as well, kintar, and it's literally means 100, and kintar literally means like hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of coins, meaning heaps and heaps of wealth, meaning lot of money. You can think of it in modern of like millions of dollars, let's say. So if you entrust him with kintar, with a lot of wealth, you addihi, he will return it like to you. Wa minhum, and from them, man, there is the one who, in ta'amanhu, if you entrust him, bi dinarin, with a dinar. A dinar is like a small currency, like a single coin. A dinar is literally a coin as well. And it is used here in the sense of the smallest unit of currency. So we can think of it like if you give somebody like just a dime or a dollar, or just give them a penny or something, that's how they would react. So if you entrust him with a dinar, la yu'addihi ilayk, they will not, or that person will not return it to you, illa, except ma dumta, that you keep constantly, alayhi, over him, qa'ima from to keep standing, like we say iqamat is salah, that let's stand up for salah, or qiyam is the when we are standing up in the standing up position of the salah. And one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-qayyum, right? And we also learn another part of the Quran, ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala nisa, the men are supposed to be the one who keep the women in their family standing, meaning they're ones who are supposed to hold the families together, who are supposed to maintain and protect the women of their lives. That's their job. They need to protect them and they need to provide for them and maintain them. And so qa'ima for standing in that sense. So there is one who, if you give them even one dinar, they will not return it to you, except you constantly keep standing over them. Dhalika, that, bi annahum, is because they, bi anna, because whom, they qalu, they say, laysa alayna, is not upon us, fil ummiyina, in the matter of ummiyin, in the matter of bani, it's referring from the point of view of Bani Israel, the Ahlul Kitab of Bani Israel. The Ummiin refers to Bani Ismail, the people, the unlettered people. It means the unlettered people, people who cannot read and write. But they used to call the Bani Ismail as Ummiin. These are the unlettered people. They cannot read or write. Sabilun, anyway. Sabil is a path, like so. Sabil is a way. We don't have any way, and here it comes in the meaning of accountability. That there is no, oh, we don't have any way concerning them. There is no way for us. Meaning there's no accountability regarding how we behave with the unlettered people. وَيَقُولُونَ, and they say alallahi, about Allah subhanahu wa taala, al kadhib, a lie. The lie. Wahum, while they ya'lamun, while they know, they have ilm of it. Ain lam and me from ilm. Right? So in this ayah, Allah SWT is telling us, and among the people of the book, there is he who, if you trust him with a great amount of wealth, he'll return it to you. And among them, there is one who, if you entrust him with a single silver coin, with a single coin, he will not return it to you unless you are constantly standing over him demanding it. This is because they say there is no blame upon us concerning the unlearned. And they speak untruth about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're saying they're ascribing this, what they're the practice that they're doing, they're ascribing it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah told us to do it. Astaghfirullah. So they're saying lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and while they know it, they're knowingly doing that. And we'll know a little, we'll learn a little more about this ayah in a bit. Then ayah number 76. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim.
بلى من أوفى بعهده واتقى فإن الله يحب المتقين.
Bala. Instead, no, right? Man, whoever, awfa, fulfills, bi'ahdihi, his covenant, wattaqa, and he has taqwa, means he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fa inna Allah, then indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yuhibbul muttaqeen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who have taqwa, who have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So here, Allah SWT is telling us, no, instead, this is not, Allah has not prescribed something for them because he loves them just because of who they are. Rather, Allah tells us who are the kind of people Allah loves. Allah loves those who fulfill their commitment and fear Allah, and those are the kind of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. So inshallah, we'll go in a little bit more detail about this ayat. Okay, so here in the ayah number 75, Allah SWT is telling us that among the people of the book, there is one who, if you trust him with a heap of gold or silver, they will give it back to you. And among them also, there is one who, if you entrust him with a single dinar, a coin of gold or silver, they will not give it back to you unless you keep standing over him. And this is because they have said there is no way we can be blamed in the matter of the unlettered people, and they tell lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowingly. So Ummeen, like we said, refers to the unlettered people. And Ummeen, why are they called Ummeen? Because Ummi refers to a mother. And Ummeen means that somebody who has as much formal education as when they were born from the womb of their mother. So somebody who has, when they're born, and they don't, obviously when somebody's born right after having birth, they don't have any formal education. So they're unlettered, they cannot read or write. So they would refer to such person as Ummi. And they would, as you know, our Prophet ﷺ, he could not read or write. And subhanAllah, that also shows us the importance of that. Yes, education and ilm is important, but ilm is not restricted to formal education. Allah Ta'ala can teach somebody without formal education as well. And yes, reading and writing is very important. And yes, we should definitely try our best to educate ourselves in different fields, in different ways. Yet, there is no reason to look down at somebody just because they cannot read and write. And then obviously, here they were referring to Bani Ismail in particular. So in this ayah, what we are learning about is, in this ayah, Allah Ta'ala is going to teach us about the breach of trust in the matter of property and wealth, meaning the matters of financial corruption are being talked about. So we learned in the previous ayat that about the people of the book, that what they're doing is they were hiding things from the scripture, and they wouldn't even share that, and they would go to the believers, and they had different schemes to try to bring the people back. So they would in the morning they would say that okay, we believe, and in the evening they would say no, we don't believe, we found it, and then whatever we saw with this prophet, we saw it with these, sat with these people, and we didn't find anything much interesting, and they would that those were the schemes and the plots to shake people of faith. And then they would not reveal, they would hide things that were there in their own revelation, which would testify to the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was the final prophet. And those things would tie up with the Quran, which Quran was confirming. So they didn't want people to understand that Quran was the final revelation. So they were hiding the spiritual treasure, because they don't. And why were they hiding it? Because they did not want to let go of the material treasure that they had and everything. And now here we are learning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us a switch from spiritual to material, that in material sense, what is happening. And then what is, and here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us through his ilm and through his wasat, right? So because he is al-wasi, he knows everything, and he knows the expanse of everything, all kinds of people and what is going on where. He knows everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that these people about whom we are talking in all these ayat, this passage, the people that we are talking about, these people have some of these people have some good habits as well, right? And this also shows us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves justice, and he is the most just, and he is al-haq, he speaks the truth, and he expects us to acknowledge the truth as well, right? Just because somebody has some bad habits does not mean, first of all, that we negate their good habits as well. So we're all human beings, we're all a mix of good and bad, so we don't do that. And generally we have so much habit as a community, as people, we have so much we are so much in a habit of generalizing people, like, oh no, these people are just like that, these people are just like that, or those people are just like that, and commenting on people on a general basis. And even if we look at a lot of modern day comedy, it's based on basically that, like, uh, taking up peculiarities of people from certain race and then making fun of them, and everything, that people of this race and that race, they do this and they do that and they do that. So we have this concept of generalizing people and then making fun, or generally looking at the bad qualities or the shortcomings of people based on that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that when we see a good quality, then then we need to acknowledge that as well, even if those in our own adversaries, in our own enemies, we see certain good qualities, and there's no harm in acknowledging those good qualities. So if there is a good quality in a person from the people of the book, then it can be mentioned and talked about. All right. And sometimes what happens to us is that um, we either praise somebody, or we talk about some shortcoming or some sin or something about somebody, and then we forget everything else. So we are like very, we find these two extremes that we fall into many a times, is like sometimes, and especially relating to people of the book sometimes, even in today's day and age, if we see that sometimes we'll find some Muslims who are so much under the spell of the people of the book, they're so much in awe of the Western culture and the people of the book and everything, that they cannot hear anything against them. They'll be like, like it's almost like they literally want to literally hold their hands and drop them to Jannah almost. Like they're like, do you think they will not go to Jannah? They are like so nice people. They're like the best people there is and everything. It's almost like when you speak to them, um, some Muslims almost say, like, as if to be good, you almost have to be a disbeliever to be good. It's like they put down anybody who's a Muslim or trying to be a Muslim or anything. It's like, like, oh, these hijabi women, they're always like this. These people, these mullahs with beards, they're always like this. And like they're always into corruption. They're always into this, and they're always. It's like that's one side. That's one extreme to go into. Yes, there are some people who do right, there are some people who do wrong, but then there is this one extreme that we go to, that we think any anybody who's like not a Muslim and who's doing good is like, that's really good, and anybody who's a Muslim is like, has to be, oh man, this is like all this, like this is, so we look up to the other group so much more, and then we put down our own selves. And another extreme is that there's some people who are so much against the people of the book that they can't hear anything nice about them. So if they hear some sheikh or somebody say something nice about about the qualities of certain people of the book they've met or they've encountered, or they've dealt with some people from the church maybe, or some synagogue or some other place, and they have had like really good qualities, or somebody is doing really good work, really good humanitarian work or something, and they praise somebody. Some Muslim praises them like astaghfirullah, like and they start to doubt this religious person's deen almost, that how can you say something good about people of the book? This is not our religion, and this and that. So that's two extremes. But Islam does not teach us extremism. It teaches us to be a balanced middle nation, right? So it teaches us that we stay balanced, and we recognize the good when we see the good, and we recognize the not so good when we see the not so good, and we are balanced and we are just in we don't generalize, and we don't stereotype people based on this whole community, everybody's like this or everybody's like that, right? Also, it is important to understand that just because somebody has the knowledge of the book, somebody has the knowledge of the book, does not make them a good or a bad person in itself. And so, for example, a knowledgeable Christian is a person who knows the Bible. A Hafiz of the Quran is a Muslim who has memorized the Quran. This does not guarantee that this person is going to be righteous as well, right? And supposing, let's say, there is a person who's a very mean dad. He's a horrible business person to deal with. He cheats people. He's like a horrible business person in many different aspects. But that person, let's say, knows a lot of Arabic. That same person can quote a lot of ayat and hadith. Now, that does not mean that just because this person knows a lot of Arabic, or this person can quote a lot of ayat or hadith, that just means that they know a lot of Arabic and they know, so, they have a knowledge of ayat and hadith. That does not mean that they are not a mean mom or dad anymore. That does not mean they're not a horrible business person anymore, right? So again, the extremes that sometimes we fall into, even in our within our community as well, that sometimes we look at we treat the ulama with, and yes, we should love and respect our ulama, and but there is a limit for reverence as well, right? So we don't treat anybody like holier than thou kind of a thing. We don't like almost going to ruku anytime we see any ulama or something. No, we love and we respect our teachers, but um, we don't put them in a pedestal and bow down to them. Like that's not what Islam teaches us, right? So we don't be like, okay, this person, just because this person has an knowledge about religion, okay, they must be like such a good person overall. They have to be good. They're doing business with them would be so nice and dandy because now this is a religious person or anything, or this is a Muslim person. This looks like a person who prays their five prayers and everything, or we just like expect them to be like all like that. And the other extreme is like, obviously, like we said before, that all these mullahs, it's just for the show. They have like all these beard and everything, and the bigger the beard, the more you should run away from this person, because it's again the extremes, right? So we are not, even within our own communities, we don't go through that extremes, right? So um like in Quran. So for example, when you talk about too much respect in the Quran, again and again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then after that is the right of the parents. Most of the times we see that the rights of the parents, and then other. But some of us have so much reverence for our ulama or our teachers that we would easily disobey our own parents, or we would not honor our own parents as much. But what Quran teaches us is like, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then our best behavior, our best company should be there for our parents, right? So for example, if I'm taking a class right now, or if you are attending a class right now, and then your mom calls up, then you should, it will be inconvenience to others, but you need to take that. There's some calls you need to take, there's some calls you need to ignore. Then yes, you can tell her, yes, mom, I'm here in this, I'm in the call, and then I can call you back and everything, but we need to take that call because it's your mom calling, right? The Prophet ﷺ told us that if he was leading salah, he was leading the salah in the masjid, leading the Isha salah and the Farz salah in the masjid, and his mom called him, he would leave the salah, and he would say, yes, yes, my mom. His mom was obviously not alive, but he would say, if my mom was alive, I would do that. That's how much we owe to our mothers. That and then we don't obviously. give somebody more reverence than our own parents if it comes to that. Obviously, if it's the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we don't obey them. If they're asking us to do something against the command of Allah, then or maybe they're not believers yet, then we don't obey them in that regard. We don't start idol worshipping or anything else that they're telling us to do, but our love and respect for them has to stay, right? And also, uh, just because someone knows their religion, um, on the other hand, as well, doesn't mean that we put our guard down. Just because somebody is a Muslim or just because somebody knows a lot about the religion doesn't mean that when we are dealing with them, that we put our guard down thinking that, they can never do any wrong. This person's so religious. How can they do any wrong? They're like the Muslims. So how can they do like they would be I can literally like close my eyes and do work. No, Islam doesn't teach us that. Islam teaches us everyone is a human being. Shaitan attacks all people. So our hijab, our beard, our Arabic, our tajweed doesn't save us from the tricks of shaitan, right? And there are people who learn religion, and what they do is they learn religion and they manipulate religion as well, so that they can get away with things. And sometimes some of the scholars have said the most dangerous people are sometimes religious people, because a common person, when they make a mistake, generally they would own up to a mistake and say, you know what, I messed up, it was a mistake, and I should take care, I shouldn't do that. But many times people um, who are from Ahl al-Kitab, people who are knowledgeable in the texts of whichever religion, many times we see this behavior that they'll find an excuse to justify their behavior, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about, teaching us about all these things in this ayah, that we have to make sure, we have to take care of these things. We have to not fall into extremes, and then we have to look at people's behavior and see how they're behaving. And then we'll find varieties of behavior of people in the same group. So when it is said that Allah SWT is telling us there is a certain number of people, there's certain people within Ahlul Kitab, when you deal with them, and even in the Muslim community or in the other religious communities, also by extension, we will see that if we give somebody heaps of money, they're so honest that even if they have to spend thousands to give the rights of other people, they will go ahead and do it because they don't want to cheat anybody. They would like literally take care of pennies and make sure they give the money back, or they whatever they owe, they give it back to people. And this is the quality that first of all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges, right? And even today, we'll find that when we deal with Ahl Kitab, we'll find that many of them are actually honest about their obligations and responsibilities. And it is said that this ayah was revealed about Abdullah bin Salam, radiallahu anhu. He was a Jewish rabbi who converted to Islam when he met the Prophet ﷺ, and he came and accepted Islam. And after he accepted Islam, before that he was a Jewish rabbi, so obviously people trusted him, gave him a lot of money. So he had a lot of trusts from people. He a lot of things which he had, which belonged to other people. But after he became Muslim, he returned all of them. He didn't say, okay, now that I'm a Muslim, I can just like take this money, which was like, okay, these people are not Muslim, so I can cheat them easily, no problem. No, he returned all of that, and he was honest with that. So it is said that it is this ayah relates to him as well. And there's also the Prophet ﷺ told us also about a couple of incidents. So, for example, there was an incident from the Bani Israel tradition, that the Prophet ﷺ told us that an Israeli man, and this is from way back, like not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but he told us about this from a way back time, that an Israeli man asked another a person from Bani Israel to lend him 1,000 dinars. And the second man said, you know what, we need to have witnesses before I give you the money. And the first person replied, you know what, Allah is sufficient as a witness. And the second person said, but I still want a surety. And the farmer said, Allah is sufficient as a surety. And then finally, the second person said, you know what, you're right. And he lent him the money for a certain time period, which was 1,000 dinar. Now, the person who had taken the debt, he went across the sea, and he was doing a job, and he finished his job. And now he was looking for a conveyance so he can come back in time for the repayment of the debt, so that he could give the money back. But he could not find any boat or anything going back, right? He tried hard, but he couldn't find anything. So what he did was he took a piece of wood, he made a hole in it, he inserted 1,000 dinars in it, and he wrote a letter to the lender, that okay, this I owed you the money, and to the effect that okay, this is the money that I owed you and everything. And then he sealed the hole tightly, And he took this piece of wood to the sea and said, Ya Allah, you know very well that I took a loan of 1,000 dinars from this and this person. He demanded a surety for me, but I told him that Allah's guarantee is sufficient, and he accepted your guarantee. He then asked for a witness, and I told him that Allah was sufficient as a witness, and he accepted you as a witness. So, and no doubt, you know, I tried hard to find a conveyance so that I could pay his money, but I could not find. So I hand over this money to you, and saying that, he threw this piece of wood into the sea, and till it went out far into the sea, and then he went away. And meanwhile, he started searching for a conveyance in order to reach the person's country. And so on the day that they were supposed to meet up, the lender comes out of his house. He goes to see whether the ship has arrived, bringing his money. And all of a sudden, he didn't find the person, but he found this piece of wood. And he took this piece of wood home. He said, okay, he'll burn it and make fire and everything. And when he saw this piece of wood, he found the money inside and the letter inside it. And and then shortly after that, the person who had taken the loan came, bringing 1,000 dinars to him, and said, you know what, by Allah, I had been trying to find a boat, to get a boat so that I could bring you the money, but I failed to get one before this one that I've come to. So here is the money, that 1,000 dinar that I owed you. So the person who lent the money is like, okay, have you sent something to me before? And the debtor replied, I told you I could not find a boat other than the one that I have now come by. So the lender said, you know what? Allah has delivered on your behalf the money you sent in the piece of wood. So you may keep this 1,000 dinar that you're giving me now, and you can go guided on the right path. Like you can depart with that. So the Prophet ﷺ told us this incident and said us to the effect that when we make an intention to repay a loan, let's say if one of us has taken a loan from somebody and we make the intention that, Ya Allah, I really want to repay this loan, then Allah sends help to that person to repay the loan. So if any of us is in debt, for example, of any kind, then we should make that intention and then try hard, obviously, then work towards repaying the loan, but then also make that intention with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, I do want to repay this loan and everything. So inshallah, Allah will help that person. Another thing that one of our scholars said is, dinar, like they say dinar, uh, it is called dinar because from the money, from the a dinar, you can either earn the deen or you can earn the nar, right? So dinar is made of deen and nar. And so wealth in itself is not, the Islamic perspective on wealth is that wealth itself is neither good nor bad. It's just a means, but you can choose what to buy with it, right? So you can choose what to buy with it and fill in your house. You can choose deen. With the money, you can use the deen, use the, sorry, astaghfirullah. You can use the money to buy the things of the deen, meaning you can use the money to do good deeds. You can do the money to buy good books, good knowledge, good things, invest in good things, make good investments, help people with it, do charity, give zakat, and take care of your family's needs and everything. Take care of the, like even have a good life yourself. Like when we have good amount of money, and when Allah has blessed us with good money, and we show it, like we show with our manner that we are well fed, we are well taken care of and everything, then alhamdulillah, like not going into israf, not going into show off, not going into extravagance, but we take care of ourselves well, then that too is showing that my Rabb is taking good care of me. That is also a way of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his blessing. So we can use the money in, or the wealth, in lot of ways to earn blessings in our deen, but we could also use the money to earn the nar. Somebody could also use the money to do sins, to hurt people, to try to gain more power, to oppress others, to to use the money in ways that Islam does not recommend. So we could do whatever with it, right? And another thing that we learn is that this is one group of people, but there's another group of people that if you give them just one dinar, what they will do is they don't want to give it back to you, right? So whoever wants to save their deen will be able to save it even when they come across a whole treasure. But whoever wants to sell, whoever finds their deen is easy to sell, therefore their deen doesn't mean much internally to them. Uh, Only one dinar will be enough to shake them from their deen. Meaning, on just one dinar, and they would lose their principles for it. They would not stand up to their principles for it, right? And except, like, so this person who owes you just 1 dinar, there are people who will not return to you even if it is 1 dime, even if it is 1 penny. They will not give it to you unless you stand on their head and you constantly remind them over it, and like constantly stand on their head and remind them literally. So because of this, some ulama, and for example, Imam Abu Hanifa, he deduced from this ayah the ruling that the lender has a right. So if somebody owes you the money, you have the right to keep pursuing the one who owes you the money until you receive your due. That is your right, because if it is your due and the other person's not giving you your due, then you have a right to that. Yes, if you forego that right, if for some reason, for let's say let's say today's legal system is such that, let's say somebody owes me $1,000 and they're not giving me $1,000, and if I go to the legal system to try to get those $1,000 back, I will incur more than $2,000 in the lawyer fees just to get those $1,000 back. So I might end up thinking, you know what, it's just not worth it. Why do I spend my time and my money to get this much money and spend more money to get that money? And like, might as well just like, okay, fine, do whatever. Allah will take care. Like I might decide that. Or if somebody owes me the money and I feel like, you know what, like it's a lot of headache, or I might feel like, this person actually is in need or whatever, let me just forget it, whatever. Like I don't want that headache on myself or anything, or I can just forgive that loan or something. That is my choice, but I do have a right to pursue what is mine. So what our scholars have said is like, we should, again, whether we utilize all our rights or not, it is important for us to know what our rights are, right? So it is the right of a lender to keep pursuing the borrower until he receives the due, right? Because some people are such that until you are after them, they will not return you what they have, what they owe you and everything. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said that about this ayah, that there are people who will not give you what they owe you unless you do a few things. Unless you stay on their case all the time, you argue with them, you fight and make a case against them, you demand and take a legal action and take every course of action that can be taken against them. So if you don't do all these things, there are some people who would literally not pay you back what they owe you, right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives us the reason why are they doing this? Why do they feel that they can get away and they're not even returning you even if they owe you something, and they don't the group of people who's not returning the money, why do they do it? And especially in reference to the Ahlul Kitab of that time, the some of the Jewish ulama at that time who would not return the money that they owed to the people, right? So why are they doing it, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the reason right after is because they have a kind of mentality which we can say is a discriminatory mentality, that what the kind of thinking that they had developed was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this world, this dunya, for the Bani Israel. So they had this mentality that this whole earth has been created for the sake of Bani Israel, and people who are not Bani Israel, people who are basically can be treated like animals. They have been made. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them to basically serve the Bani Israel. The purpose of creation of anybody who is not Bani Israel is to serve the Bani Israel. So they had created this notion amongst themselves, and then they um, like once when you lie something and you keep lying and keep lying until they say you start believing your own lies, right? And so what they say is that there is no accountability against these people because they're not Bani Israel. So like you can do whatever with them. It's not it doesn't matter what you do with them, right? And usually the word sabil is used for path, but here sometimes it is used for dalil or blame or accountability. So here it is used in that sense, that what these people are saying is that there is no accountability for us against these unlettered people, like as particularly Bani Ismail. We don't have like any. So basically what they think is any wealth that anyone has in this world is actually belonging to the Jews. It's just that Allah Ta'ala has given it to some other people for a little bit, but it actually belongs to us. So we can take it anytime. So there's no harm on us. And the whole world is for us, basically. That's what their thought is. And anybody anywhere has any kind of wealth, I can easily take it because it is actually mine to begin with. So I can snatch it. I can do whatever. It is my right to do that, right? So they would call the people of Makkah as Ummiyin, and they would say that this is all good. So if you look at the tradition of Bani Israel, they used two words. We find two words today as well used very commonly. One is Gentile. So it's a Jewish term for someone who is not a Jew. Any person who's not a Jew, they use the word Gentile for them. Or we also see the word Goim, um, uh, which is a plural, which means nations, and it's a Hebrew word in Old Testament, which literally means nations. So it refers to the nations of the world. So so in the Old Testament, Jews were called to be a nation separate to the other nations, which were all pagan, right? So Allah SWT told them to be not to be pagan and to separate themselves in that sense, that not do idol worshipping and all these things, and be a people of Tawheed and worship Allah SWT alone. And all so slowly what happens is all non-Jewish nations came to be called Goy in a day-to-day terms. That's what they would call, right? As in the nations from which God had asked Jews to separate themselves, right? And now, in today's day and age, and for some time, Jews use this word to refer to non-Jews as Gentiles, and sometimes it is used with a derogatory connotation, right? So, for example, people use the word like, may Allah Ta'ala protect us, but may Allah forgive us. But in today's day and age, we see people use the word black for African American descent, but they don't use it in the sense of just like just recognizing different people, but in the way of putting down people in a derogatory sense, right? But what does Islam teach us? Islam teaches us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made all of us as different races, meaning the different with different features and different kind of looks and different kind of skin colors, and so we can recognize each other. The purpose of different races and different features and different things is so that we can recognize each other, and it helps us in creating the bonds and recognizing each other, not for looking down upon anybody else. So no person is better than another based on their skin color. A white is as precious as a black, as precious as a white, right? So all people have equal rights when Islam is considered. That's what Islam teaches us. But what these people had done was they had created these blatant lies against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his law, and they knew it very well. But what they had done was they had devised various tricks so that they could gratify their own desires and greed for like worldly goods and pleasures. And so what slowly what had happened in their tradition was their people had started making some of their rabbis had started giving these fatwas, which were like basically not derived from the religious text, but these fake fatwas, you can call them, about, you can do this, you're allowed to do this, you're allowed to do that. And slowly they found their way into the Torah as well. So today, if anyone reads the Torah, the Old Testament, if we come across a copy and you read that today, we will get the impression that even in general moral matters or mutual dealings and human rights, the law seems very different for them, for Bani Israel and for non-Israelites, right? And it's very clear racial prejudice that we will see there. But and all these things they have like put in the slowly they made these fatwas, and slowly they found their way into the Torah, because what how they see with the Quran and with other religious scriptures, there's one major difference. Is like Quran is exact verbatim word of God. And anything that's added, like anything that's either the translation or the commentary or the tafsir, that is the translation and the commentary and the tafsir. That does not form the Quran. The Quran is the actual Arabic Quran only. Anything else is a translation. So the Mus'haf is just the actual Quran in Arabic, right? Anything else which is added, a scholar's opinion could be added. We could have different things written in a book and everything, but that would always be separate. That would always be the commentary and the tafsir. But that there is a very distinct difference between the Quran and the commentary of a scholar. And it will be, when we read a tafsir, we'll see, okay, this is the commentary of this scholar had this opinion, this scholar had this opinion. Sometimes they would agree, sometimes they would disagree, and sometimes they would say this, sometimes they would take this ruling based on this. And that's so we'll read all these, and we'll read translations, and we'll read multiple translations sometimes, and everything. But those, even translations, we would not call them as the Quran. We would call them the English translation of the Quran, or the Hindi translation of the Quran, or the Telugu translation of the Quran. We wouldn't call it, or the Pashto translation of the Quran. We wouldn't call it the Quran itself. The Quran is the only Arabic Quran, and just the Quran, right? But what happened with the other religious texts over the period of time? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not take the responsibility to preserve them. He left that responsibility in the hands of people. And that's Allah's wisdom as well, because that shows us how much, that by contrast, we learn how much Quran is a miracle. Right? So with the other religious texts, what starts happening was this is the verse that was revealed, and then this is the verse which was in the original Torah, and then the translation, and then translation becomes the Torah, and then over a time, this one rabbi gives an opinion, and the opinion of a rabbi is taken given as much importance as the original book itself, and that sometimes takes stakehold, and everything was written in the same passage or same thing, until a time that you could be there was no distinguishing thing between the two, the opinion or the words of a scholar and the words of the original Old Testament. So everything got mixed up on the way. So today what we see is, and that's how today what we see is, there's a lot of mixed up thing. This some is original. So that's why we say, whenever we talk of the Old Testament or the New Testament as we see today, we don't confirm anything in it, we don't deny anything in it, because there are parts in it which are still there from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there also made a lot of changes and we wouldn't know. So we would, anything that agrees, we use Quran as the touchstone. So anything that agrees with the Quran, we take it. Anything that doesn't agree with it, we keep silent about it. We don't, we leave that, right? So but what they had done was they had kept making these changes, and now all these changes and fatwas that they had made, that those found their way into the Torah, and just a lot of racial prejudice in that sense. So all these changes that they had made, and they believed, now they had started believing and propagating, obviously, that it's the religious duty or the religious right, that um, the there is the Old Testament does talk about the prohibition of, you cannot take over somebody else's property, and you cannot be dishonest, and you should not take riba and all those things. But they said this actually applies only when you're dealing with the Bani Israel. When you're dealing with somebody else, it doesn't apply, right? So they would say things like this. So they made a lot of changes, especially in the matters of finances and loans and interest, right? So their religious leaders made permissible all kind of dishonest dealings with others. It's like that's totally permissible. Allah says you can do whatever, like astaghfirullah, they had made all these things. So what, for example, they would say is that a Jew cannot take interest from a Jew, but a Jew can easily take interest from a non-Jew. That's not a problem, right? You can eat and drink from their wealth, no problem. That's totally fine. You can snatch their wealth or their property, no problem. That's totally fine. You're entitled to it because it's yours anyway. Any wealth that is there anywhere in the world, it's yours anyway. Other people are just like there to serve you anyway. So, for example, in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 20, it says, to a foreigner, you may lend upon interest, but to your brother, you shall not lend upon interest, right? And similarly, they had created things like, if a bull belonging to an Israel, a Bani Israel, goes and injures another bull of a person who's not from Bani Israel, then there is no nothing due on the Israeli person, of a Bani Israeli to compensate or anything. Nothing's due. It's fine. If your bull hurts another person's bull, or cow or something, no problem. That's totally fine. But if somebody who's a non-Israeli comes and hurts a Bani Israeli person's bull, then they have to pay the compensation. That's how it works, right? Because and they would say things like, if you go to a neighbor, if you go somewhere and you find some valuable that is like lost, and you saw something on the road, let's say lying down or something is there, then what you should do is you should see what is the population around that area. And if it is an Israeli area, then you go and make an announcement in the that okay, has anybody lost something? I found this valuable thing, and then if anybody comes and give me the description, if it's yours, then come and take it, and blah blah blah. You can do all of that. But if it is a non-Israeli neighborhood or a community, then you don't need to make any announcement. You can just keep it. It's fine. It's yours. So no problem at all, right? They would say something like that, and also in they also said Rabbi Shumail says that if if there is a court case, if let's say there is an argument or there's a disagreement between Bani Israel and an Ummi person, and they bring you a case to a judge in your courts, then what you do is, if the way to give a verdict is the way to look at the case and give the verdict according to the Bani Israeli laws favors your brother, favors the Bani Israel, then you should give your judgment based on that and say this is our law, so this is how it's going to be. But if the way to look at it and everything would from the laws of the Ummi people is going to favor your brother from Bani Israel, then you do the judgment based on that, and you say this is your law, so we are following your law. And if both laws are favoring the other person, the Ummi person, then you should try to find any some excuse or some way to make your person win, right? And that's fine. That's what you should do, right? And he also says that you should take advantage of every mistake that somebody a non-Israeli person does. So you should actually, this is your right, you should take advantage of any mistake that any a non-Israeli a person ever does, right? And today we find actually this same mentality at a much bigger level. Like they feel it's okay for them to take the lands and the assets and the lives of non-Jewish people, no problem. That's totally fine. And Quran refers to this as moral depravity. It tells us that we should not to us as believers the Quran. So again, we are the people who are studying the book, right? So why are we learning about this? The purpose of learning is not so that we can go ahead and criticize people. The purpose is Allah Ta'ala is teaching us for our own lives at an individual level and also at a community level and a national level even, that we should not be deluded by somebody's being a person of the book and just entertain hopes just because there are people of the book, that we have hopes of moral support from them or a very just dealings with them. That these people, they were not what they're doing then and what they're doing now even is they're not able to stand up and bear witness to the truth, right? They were charged even in terms of spirituality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a sacred trust that okay, when the final prophet comes, this trust was all the prophets had this covenant, and then by extension all their followers as well, the final prophet will come at this time, and then you have when the final prophet comes and the final divine revelation comes, then you should follow that and you should be the believers and everything. But they would not stand up to that truth, right, as well. But now it's also their day-to-day dealings and their financial dealings and everything. They've changed everything. They've like there's a lot of financial and moral corruption going on, and all their sayings about this, that like we don't owe them anything, anybody who's not from Bani Israel, we don't owe them anything, and this and that. So what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying here? Is their claim true? No. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us very clearly is وَيَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ. They are saying a lie on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like to say to do something, first of all, do something wrong, and then to attribute that I'm doing this because Allah told me to do it. Allah told me I could do it. Now they're making now that's not just one mistake. Now that's also putting a lie on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Astaghfirullah. Right? So they are knowingly putting a lie on, they're ascribing a lie to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never said any such thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created every human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives honor. وَلَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given honor, karam, to every single human being. Like whether it's a Muslim or a non-Muslim or an atheist or a person from LGBT community or this community or that community, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave everybody an honor, right? And um, the honor of being a human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given to anybody. So when we are dealing with somebody, no matter what, that person might be an atheist, a Muslim, a non-Muslim, whatever community they belong to, if I'm having a business dealing with a person, I'm supposed to be honest in that business dealing. Doesn't mean I'm endorsing everything that they have. Doesn't mean I'm endorsing their whole lifestyle or their beliefs or everything. No, whatever amount of dealing I have, and in this world we'll have to have dealings with different people of different kinds. So when my dealing with somebody is, let's say, I'm a service provider for a person, then whatever is in my contract, whatever I need to do, I need to honor my commitment. Whatever is not my commitment, I can be firm on that. No, this is not my commitment and everything, right? And whatever I have signed up for, I sign up for that. I don't step back on that either, right? And what is the Quran doing? If we think of the context at that time, this Quran which is coming down, it is actually telling things very, very clearly, and it is actually uncovering the plots that they have done, not just what they're doing right now at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but things that they have done to their own religion over the period of hundreds of years. They have been doing, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought it all in the open. They have removed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has like literally uncovered their all their things that they have worked hard on and everything to create all these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just uncovered this like just like that. So this is very hard for them to digest, right? So why would they? So the people who have been engaged in this kind of religious and financial corruption and spiritual corruption, they were obviously becoming enemies of the Quran. It's like, why was Quran bothering them so much? Because Quran was bringing to light whatever they had worked so hard to hide and change. Quran was just bringing to light, like the Prophet ﷺ had no access to the Old Testament. He couldn't even read or write, but the Quran was kept telling him, and kept coming and coming and coming and telling things, right? And also, what we learn in the Quran again and again is that we cannot declare things halal and haram by ourselves. Nobody can declare like this person, because this person is not a believer, his mal, his wealth is halal on me. I can have it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says I can have it. Where did Allah say that? Allah never said that. It's like if somebody says something in a gathering, goes to a gathering and says things that I never said and ascribes that, you know what, this lady said this and this, and I never said that. It would really offend me that, okay, why are you ascribing something to me that I didn't even say that? And we think that it would be okay as a crime against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's your creator, and you cannot make a lie. So the the authority to decide halal and haram, the authority to decide a moral compass is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He alone decides that. So we cannot change that. Yes, when we come across a hadith or somebody quotes us something, we can say, you know what, I haven't heard this before, and are you sure this is authentic? And I can try to find more about it. But if I'm really convinced and I find out that yes, it is authentic and everything, then I take a step back. It's like, you know what, I need to understand this and everything, and then maybe I need to change how I deal up with these things and everything. But then I don't make halal and haram based on what I think myself, right? And that's why there is so much value in our religion for submitting to Allah's commands. There are times that we pray, there are times that we are not supposed to pray. And when we, even if I feel like praying, the times when Allah SWT told me I cannot pray, then not praying at that time is obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So our religion is based on submitting to Allah, not creating our own parameters of right and wrong and saying, okay, this is a higher level. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us something when Allah knows better than me. And that's my premise. Whenever I come to the Quran, I come as a seeker, I come as a beggar, I come with my all my intellectual arrogance, I put it all away and saying, I'm here as a beggar to seek from Allah. I'm not going to put my own thoughts and my own things here, but I'm here to learn, right? So um, again, the point to consider here, that what we are learning is that is it something, is this does this exist, that there are people in this world who are big or small or who are at different levels and everything, and what can we do as a Muslim? How do we interact with people who are not Muslims, right? So for example, in a Muslim nation, let's say there's a nation where it is predominantly Muslim, the authorities are Muslims, and it's majority Muslim nation, and there are some non-Muslims who live there. So how do we behave there with them, right? And some Muslims, unfortunately, astaghfirullah, may Allah Ta'ala forgive us and protect us, some Muslims have fallen prey to the same kind of thinking that Bani Israel, some ulama of Bani Israel propagated at that time, that you know what, it's okay to take something from a non-Muslim person, and for example, I can shop on cards with no intention to pay back. That's totally fine, but that's not an Islamic behavior. Like um, Quran is highly critical of this mentality. It does not allow unjust dealings with anybody, whether it's a Muslim or a non-Muslim or an atheist or anybody. We have to behave justly. So someone came and asked Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu that, what should be the matter regarding a non-Muslim who's staying in a Muslim state, who were called Jimmi, right? A person who is a non-Muslim staying in a Muslim state and paying the jizya, that person is called a Jimmi. Okay. So what is the ruling regarding this? Because if I find a chicken or a hen of such a person who's a non-Muslim, then usually, what we do, we think that, okay, this is a non-Muslim person, so there's no harm. We can take this chicken or this hen, no problem. We can just keep it if we found it. But Ibn Abbas said that this, what you're saying, is something like what Ahl Kitab used to say, right? And what they used to say that you cannot do that. If somebody has left it for you and they have gone and everything, then it's totally different thing. But if somebody is living here and they're paying jizya, then it is the responsibility of the Muslim nation to protect their life and their wealth and everything will be protected. And so you cannot take, basically, the core of the matter is, you cannot take something that belongs to somebody else, and you cannot just take it and say, you know what, I'm a believer, so I can just take it. No, no, you cannot do that. That the Quran does not allow that. You cannot do that. And um, the Sayyid bin Jubair radiallahu anhu, he says that when the Prophet ﷺ heard these kind of things being said by the Ahlul Kitab, by the people of the book, that they can take anything from non-Bani Israel and this and then, that's totally fine and everything. Then the Prophet ﷺ remarked that these enemies of Allah are liars, right? And all the things which are from Jahiliyyah, all the things which are said from the time of Jahiliyyah, they are now finished, right? Like they are now, they have now been abolished and everything except trusts. So basically, any interest-based transaction, everything which was from pre-Islamic period was abolished at that time. But one thing which still exists after Fatah Makkah, even after Islam got victory, after Islamic Khilafah was established and everything, was amanat. Meaning what? If you owe something to somebody, even if that person is a fasik or a fajr or somebody who's involved in a lot of sin, somebody who's not a believer at all, doesn't matter. If you owe them money, you need to give it back to them. You need to return what. So no matter if somebody is a fasik or hajr, that person's amanat will be returned to them. Right. And again, like we talked sometime before, like modern literature and movies, they promote a lot of Robin Hood mentality, that there's no harm to steal from the rich because they're so sinful. They've done so much harm, they've done so much wrong. So you can steal from them and you can give it to the poor. And that person, in a lot of our modern day literature and movies, that person is like made into a hero. Like, wow, that person, like he's literally like he's giving punishment to the sinful, rich, non-believing people, and then he's giving all these riches that he's collecting, he's giving it to these poor people who are believers, who are in need and everything. So, but this is not a correct Islamic way. We cannot. So, for example, let's say somebody steals really expensive shoes from a store, and then that person puts these shoes outside a masjid, that somebody who's praying salah, one of those person will come and wear it, so I'll get sabab from this. No, that's not how it works, right? So we cannot we cannot make a mistake from one side and then do a good from the other. So for example, I cannot run a liquor store and earn a lot of money, and then from that money, if I make build a masjid, that does not somehow exonerate my running a liquor store. That does not. Yes, building a masjid is another deal. But first of all, I should not be putting any haram money there. Also, any money that just doing something good out of the money that I earn by haram means does not make that money halal, right? It does not work like that. We have to do things in the right way. So it's like one of our teachers says that let's say even for the sake of teaching the deen or things in the deen, it's not just important to teach the right thing, but also teach in the right way. Do things in the right way, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do them. Right? We have to follow them in the right way. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that in this ayah that if anybody's doing this, if anybody's doing engaging into financial corruption and everything and ascribing it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that person is lying. That is not true, right? And yes, we learned before that sometimes people come up with this excuse that, you know what, people, you know that, and we learn from our religion that people who don't have iman, their amal will not be accepted. So some people um, say that, like when somebody is a kafir, even if they're doing a lot of good deed, then it won't be accepted. So why should you praise them? What's the reason to praise them, right? So they give this excuse or everything. But again, there is a distinction here. Whether somebody's amal is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not, or whether we praise it or not, are two separate things, right? When we praise somebody's good behavior, that does not mean that we are saying it will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam does not teach us prejudice or short-sightedness. It teaches us open-hearted appreciation and of excellence wherever we see it, even if it is in our own enemies or adversaries or people who have a totally different lifestyle or way of thinking than us. So, for example, if a disbeliever does something good to a certain degree, what happens is they receive its benefit in the form of good reputation in this world, and they do, and we contribute to that too. So if, let's say, Mother Teresa is doing a lot of good, she is doing good. There's no denying she did a lot of good. Whether it is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the akhirah, I don't know. You don't know. I don't know what belief she died on. But me and you both know that she did a lot of good. She actually did help a lot of people. So there's no harm in praising the good that she did. And for the and that's a benefit she gets, which is the good reputation in this world. In the hereafter, I don't know whether it's accepted or not. Also, in case whether it's any other person, let's say any person who does a lot of good and they pass away, uh, it could mean they might have died on iman and they might have gone to jannah, I don't know. They might not have died on iman, and in that case all their good deed might mean some reduction in their punishment in the hereafter. It could mean that, right? So either way, there is no harm in any of us praising something good that we see in people who might or might not be from our faith. It does not negate or it does not show any less of my commitment to my faith if I'm praising certain good quality that I see in a person who does not belong to my faith, right? And also, just because I'm praising something about them does not mean I'm praising everything about them, right? So, and also in this ayah, one more point is that in this ayah, first, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises those among them who are doing good, honest, and upright. And what that does is it encourages them to keep doing the good, and it calls them to the right path. So these were the people who were honest. These were the kind of people who embraced Islam, like Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu anhu, right? Also, another thing is starting with positive is important because, like, when we are hearing in this whole passage, we are hearing so much negatives about, like, there was spiritual corruption and they were trying to hide the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is the prophet and they recognize him, and they were trying to hide their own ayat, and they were doing all these schemes to shake the believers and everything. It is when we are hearing all these scheming and negatives and everything, it is very easy to sometimes form a blanket negative opinion about their religious leaders that like uh, these people are like this only, and we see that in some of our people today, that they talk about certain groups saying, oh, these people are like this only, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that in even just the beginning of this ayah, first of all, Allah ta'ala highlights something positive. That just because somebody is engaged in something negative doesn't mean that you ignore their positive. Yes. Also, then he says a group from among them do this and a group from among them do that. That means we don't say blanket positive and blanket negative statement about any group. And we don't say blanket positive and be naive either. We don't say, these people are like religious people or this and that, and we just become so naive that we let them cheat us and everything. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, and we learned in Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, even when dealing between two believers, you're having a certain financial contract, And that's the biggest ayah of the Quran, the longest ayah of the Quran. The longest ayah of the Quran is not dealing about Tawheed and matters of like afterlife and this and that. The longest ayah of the Quran in Surah Baqarah is dealing with financial matters, that when you make a financial contract, when you have a dealing with something, have witnesses and write it down and everything. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows human nature, like, and we deal with all kinds of people. So we should have things clearly written down in our contracts. We should have witnesses, and we should have things so that when a agreement happens, and in the beginning, usually whenever we begin anything, usually parties are very nice to each other and everything because there's nothing conflicting and everything. But when conflicts happen, it's good to have things in writing, because then you can bring back and say, you know what, this is what it is and everything. So the point is that we don't become naive. We take our measures to protect ourselves, whether we are dealing with a religious person or a not religious person. That does not mean anything. A person who knows a lot of Quran is just a person who knows a lot of the Quran. Doesn't mean we automatically believe they are going to be righteous. They're going to be 100% righteous and they'll never cheat anyone. They'll never lie or anything. They'll always be good, right? So we have to take care of that. And then in the next time, when they are claiming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves them so much, so they can just get away with anything, they can treat anybody anyhow, and the whole world belongs to them anyway. Allah ta'ala created the whole world for their sake, and they can just take away anybody's property, no problem, no harm in it. It's not, it's their right anyway, that they can take whoever it want. Other people are just like holding it for them, and they're there to serve them anyway, right? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by one word, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala negates everything. It's like, no, bala, no. Actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love you just because of who you are. The people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves are other kind of people, and they have these qualities irrespective of what race they belong. A person could be from Bani Israel and have these qualities, and Allah will love them. And a person is from Bani Ismail and have these qualities, Allah will love them. A person is from India, a person is from China, a person's from America, a person's from indigenous people, a person's from Australia, wherever a person could be, male, female, young, old, a person has these qualities, educated, uneducated, literate, illiterate, whatever kind of abilities a person has, like from the sense of the word, a person with certain disabilities or no disabilities at all. No matter what kind of a person is, if they have these qualities, Allah Ta'ala will love them. And what are the qualities? And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala tells us, first, rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who fulfill their covenant. What is ahad? Right? Ahad is a pledge or a covenant which is a bilateral agreement, meaning the two parties who've had some mutual discussions and they've agreed on something. Both have agreed to abide on it, and both need to abide to it now. Like both need to take care of their side of things, and so that's a ahad, that's a pledge, that's a covenant. As opposed to that, a wada that we make to somebody is a promise. It's unilateral. Like I could just say, like, let's say I visit somebody and it's like, you know what, I promise I'll come to visit you again. Like I had so much good time, or like I love you so much, or something. I made a promise. There was no discussion. I just made a promise on my own behalf. That's a unilateral wada. But ahad is something between two parties, and it's a bilateral agreement. And in this ayah, Allah SWT is highlighting the merit of fulfillment of a covenant. Like there's a lot of merit in fulfilling a covenant and to worship Allah subhanahu. So what was the first covenant that all of us made, which was called the when we were all ruh, when we were all in the alami arwa, right? That we Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us, am I not your Lord? And all of us attested to this, that yes, you are our Lord. We will worship you alone, right? So the first and the most important the covenant that each one of us has given, the pledge that each one of us has given, is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Another covenant that all the people before the Prophet ﷺ gave, like all the prophets before the Prophet ﷺ, and by extension all their followers did, was to believe in the final prophet. So if the final prophet comes in their time, then they will accept that prophet and they'll follow that prophet, right? So that was a covenant as well. Right. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, and then obviously we do these contracts with all other people as well. We do different kind of financial contracts and social contracts, and a marriage is a contract as well between two parties. So different kind of contracts that we do, and we need to take care of those contracts, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically rejecting the Jewish claim that they enjoy any special status or position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore they're superior to others and they have no moral obligations towards the unlettered Arabs or anybody else that they encounter. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is totally rejecting that and saying that, um, like who will go to Jannah or not, and who will be caught or not, that decision is not does not rest with any human being. That decision is Allah's. So you can't interfere with that decision. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. So you cannot create your own things and then hold people accountable to what you've created yourself. Right. And even we see extremism in religion as well. Wherever we see extremism in whichever form, people saying things and that, okay, you need to do this when it is not from the Quran and Sunnah, and they're misinterpreting and getting things to do extreme, then they're also doing something wrong by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're ascribing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what He did not say. Right. And whoever, on the other hand, whoever fulfills their covenant, then they fulfill their covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well and with other people as well, and they live a life of taqwa, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes these kind of people, right? And if someone is like is a fasik or a fajr, then it does not give us a license to cheat them. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might not accept their good deeds if they're doing any good deeds and everything, but that's another matter, right? So if let's say a Muslim harms a disbeliever or a fasik unjustly in this world, then the Muslim will be answerable for this in the next world. So even if you harm somebody who is a sinner, if we are harming that person unjustly, then we will be answerable for this. So what is harming somebody justly? If it is in a court of law and somebody is given a punishment by the court, and let's say a Muslim executioner is um, carrying out the court's law, then there something which is being done in a just way. But if we do anything unjustly, even if it is against the worst sinner, then we will be answerable for this, right? But on the other hand, yes, if at the case of that fasik or that fajr might be that whatever, if let's say if I had harmed another Muslim, what happens is in the akhirah, if I have harmed another Muslim, I will be held accountable for that harm, and that person who I harmed and who bore that harm, his levels will be raised in Jannah because of that. Now, in the case of a fasik or a fajr and a non-believer, what will happen is on the day of judgment, because of whatever harm they faced in this world, their levels will not be raised. Their levels will not be raised. But a Muslim will still be asked about it. A Muslim will still be accountable for it. So whether their levels are raised or not raised, I should worry about my own. I will be accountable regardless of that, right? And so what we are learning here is what are the kind of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves is the people who fulfill their covenants, who fulfill their promises that they make to people, and who live a life of taqwa. A person's station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the kind of love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for us, it it lies on the fact that how much we fulfill our covenants and we abide by them under all kind of circumstances. Like it might be really hard for me to follow something or something. I made a commitment or something, and then it might be really hard for me to follow it. But if I still make a effort, my best effort to follow it, then what will happen is then I will um, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love me more because I'm making as much effort as I can to fulfill my covenant and to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As opposed to this, when somebody um, starts eating haram and makes it halal, like meaning it was haram to take any riba, but they said that taking riba from a non-Israeli is fine, right? But it is still haram for them, but they made it halal on themselves. When anybody does that, when anybody knowingly converts a haram into a halal and eats it, then what happens is the punishment for that in this world is from their heart, the tawbah and the guilt goes away. The the guilt, the feeling of guilt, the feeling of taqwa, the feeling of I should return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I should seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that goes away. As opposed to this another person who's also maybe ate from riba, but they feel the guilt. They feel like, Ya Allah, I did something wrong. Ya Allah, forgive me. Ya Allah, I want to correct myself. Ya Allah, I'm so much in sin. I want to correct myself. That is a person in a outwardly, both of those people might be doing the same thing, but there's a world of difference between what's going on with them. And to fulfill our covenants also mean, like, for example, I have taken an oath of citizenship of the country, then I need to follow that oath of citizenship. That's a part of my deen too. I need to follow that, right? And so having taqwa and following our leader in, like, and who's our leader, the Prophet ﷺ, in praying, fasting, giving zakat and everything, all of this is a matter of having taqwa. So the way to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to fulfill our covenants, and covenants even to the point of, some scholars say that covenant even to the point of what we promise our children. For example, let's say I say to my child, like, okay, you finish this today and tomorrow we'll go for ice cream, and the child's like so happy, he finishes the work, and the next day comes, he's like, okay, you promised, let's go for ice cream. Like, you know what? Like, I'm tired today and everything. No, I made a commitment. I should go. And if I can't go, I said, you know what? I know I promised and I should take you. But if I'm not able to take, then I express it clearly that, yes, I made a promise, but you know what? I'm not able to, but we'll go tomorrow. But even sometimes we don't even realize the little promises that we do even to our children, but then we break them so easily, right? So, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be people of taqwa, meaning we look at even the little promises that we make to people. Either don't make a promise. If you make a promise, then you live by it, right? And on the other hand, those people who challenge Allah's authority and violate the covenant with Him, and yet they claim to be righteous and the favorites of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are living in literally living in a fool's paradise. May Allah ta'ala protect us from being such people. May Allah ta'ala make us of those people who follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, um, who who keep ourselves away from all kind of financial and especially spiritual corruption, and who give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his due, and who never, ever, ever put any lie and ascribe any lie towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah ta'ala make us people of taqwa, make us the people of who fulfill our covenants, make us of the people who are pleasing to Him, make us of the people who are pleased with Allah and whom Allah is pleased with. And may Allah ta'ala grant us wisdom and help us in our dealings with all the people that we deal with in this life, because this in this short life itself we have to earn our Jannah, or we might end up earning our nar. May Allah ta'ala protect us. Um, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala united us as sisters in Islam in this world, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reunite us as sisters in Islam on the day of judgment under the shade of His throne, when there will be no shade except His, and then once again in Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah ta'ala accept this from us despite our shortcomings. Any goodness that came from this talk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the owner of all good, and any shortcomings are mine and mine alone, as I am a human being open to mistakes all the time. Despite our mistakes and shortcomings, may Allah Ta'ala accept this from us. May Allah Ta'ala make this a means of increasing my iman and the iman of anybody who listens to this. May Allah Ta'ala accept this from anybody who listens to this, and all the effort for anybody who listens to this, and whatever time, whatever energy you give into this. And may Allah Ta'ala make us of those people who, more than speaking about things, who start to actually follow the things, who actually start to implement those things in our lives. آمين يا أرحم الراحمين. سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك 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 ونتوب إليك.